Hey folks, Steve here with a very special unboxing video for you today. We're actually doing a double feature. We're going to be unboxing the Europe in Turmoil Deluxe Edition, as well as Europe in Turmoil II, the Interbellum Years. So these are just recently released from Compass Games. They had a very small Kickstarter run recently that was also available if you didn't want to pre-order through their website. And this has been shipping out to people. I was sort of late. I missed the Kickstarter entirely. I totally sort of lost knowledge that it was going on. But I put my order in, I think, just as the final phases of the pre-order prices were available to get these. Now, before I get started, I do want to point out that a couple of years ago, I did an unboxing version of the original Europe in Turmoil game. And I also did a review video that got a lot of views and a lot of good comments, and I really appreciate that. And if, I guess it's not really spoilers because this was a couple of years ago. I rated Europe in Turmoil very, very highly, the original game. I think my BGG rating in the actual system is a 10 out of 10, which is maybe overly generous. I don't know, but I sure liked it a heck of a lot. I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more than Twilight Struggle, even because it just had a very different feel to the game. So I'm quite enamored with Europe in Turmoil in general. So, as the designer, Chris Van Beurden, I may be pronouncing that wrong. I apologize, Chris. Um, had done some work to bring this to a deluxe edition. There are some minor changes to the game and to cards that, really it is a new edition of the game. It is effectively a second edition of the original Europe in Turmoil. And I decided that I would upgrade from my original edition to this. I was willing to go and spend the money for the deluxe edition because I just enjoyed the game that much. And then, of course, now, and there's a little bit of a glare, I apologize, we have Europe in Turmoil 2, which is kind of a similar idea, only between World War One and World War Two, and there's certainly some differences in the portrayal of what the players, who the players are and what you're trying to achieve from Europe in Turmoil One. So it's not simply a copy and paste. There are some distinct differences, and we'll mention those. I also want to point out, and I'm sure it's going to be this way for most folks, if you purchase Europe in Turmoil, it's very likely you're going to get this in the box as a separate thing in the shipping box. This was not inside the game. We haven't taken the shrink wrap off. But in my package of both games, it just came like this. This is a player aid that allows you to combine the two games across a grand campaign. I have no idea how well this all will work. I just know it was like an extra thing they decided to do, maybe as part of the Kickstarter. Not 100% sure, but basically you play through Europe in Turmoil, you make some determinations on how that ended, and then that can affect the beginning of Europe in Turmoil 2. There's a backside where you can kind of see there are deck changes, removing certain cards from the deck, um, like Adolf Hitler and Mein Kampf, under certain conditions. So it really just depends on uh, what the result is. So you can see the Archduke lives. That's a different way to end it. The Hall of Mirrors, where the Central Powers win, has a different set of things happening. So kind of interesting, and that kind of fits in a neat little niche that you can enjoy when playing both games if you have both and you want to do that. So let's start with unboxing the first game in the series. I guess it's a series now. It didn't used to be. Of the deluxe edition. So we'll probably see not a whole lot different in terms of what things look like for the for the game itself. Everything's been updated a little bit to be higher quality, is my understanding. So the box is certainly sturdy, probably sturdier than the original box. I bet. I have it somewhere behind me on the game shelf. Um, okay, so we will have baggies, always appreciated. Two dice, appropriately colored for blue and yellow. As a reminder for this game, if you're not familiar, the players are effectively the I guess they're playing not as the U.S. or Russia, like in say Twilight Struggle, but are effectively ideologies. So a authoritarian ideology or a more liberal, democracy-minded um, ideology. And so all of the cards, are really there's a little bit of like odd shape to how these were packaged, but I don't see that as being a major issue. You can kind of see like, there are different things that are going to affect, here in particular, uh, the Naval Arms Track, uh, German Navy. That's sort of replacing your space race track from Twilight Struggle in a way. And there are different eras: Edwardian era, Victorian era. So these are the main engine of the game, like Twilight Struggle. You could say that this is a Twilight Struggle like game. Um, get these off so we can see the card quality. Isn't it's a I think they used a different material from the cards from the original game, so might be a little bit different there. But the cards have been given a once over. Second International, uh, Franz Ferdinand, Dreyfus Affair, so you can see how there are a variety of different events cards in here, and it works very similar to how you would see Twilight Struggle, where you can play a card for points, you can play it for an event. Sometimes that card is meant for your opponent, in which case you get the points, but the event may occur here. And as opposed to Twilight Struggle with the like military arms track and different things, here there's a tension mechanic that governs when World War One breaks out and under what auspices it does. You can have these cards that set up the alliances. It is possible to screw with that a little bit, and maybe as the authoritarian player, you try to bury this card and keep it from coming out so that the Franco-Russian alliance never happens. Um, Dual alliance, so these different things that come in, and you're playing strength points effectively, influence points, either for authoritarian or liberal player in different spaces that all have connections, and we'll show the map here in a minute. So the cards all look good there. I'll probably want to look at the other deck. There's also the mobilization deck. So there are stability cards. These are special cards that you can play during scoring. And then here are mobilization cards. And at the end of the game, you sort of play out the opening phases of World War One by playing and choosing these cards. And there's a whole little mini game within this, which I find to be interesting and a fun little side bit. I think it's optional. Maybe they made these mandatory. We'll look at that in the rule book here. So here is the rule book. Now this is glossy, full color, 2-column format. In a few pages, it goes to a different format. So just to kind of hit this at a expedited speed, it's not a terribly huge amount of rules. Ultimately, the rules end in about 14 pages, so there's not a huge amount of rules bloat here or anything. It's a pretty straightforward game, I'd say. There are different event markers to keep track of. The game does a pretty good job of explaining the way that cards work. You get cards, you play action rounds, card play operations, placing of support markers, not strength markers, support markers, that's what they're called. There's also a number of additional things you have, designer notes. I'm not sure if these are, yeah, I think these are the original design notes. You have notes for the cards, so additional historical reference for the different events in the game, and an example of play, which is always appreciated in these sorts of games. So you can see how things are played, how things are, how things all come together, and then What's also important is they added in the deluxe edition an additional scenario, so that you have the Edwardian era. Is that the right way to say that? So a different setup. In the original game, I believe there was only one setup, and here they're basically allowing you to uh, expand that to an additional scenario, so you can start at a different time period, which is good for flexibility. We get a player aid card. Now this is looking like a really basic one that just describes how cards can be played. What does that look like? Support check, placing support, naval arms, crisis rolls, Great War. We'll be fighting with the focus here so you guys can see that a little bit better. It's a single-sided, straightforward. There's another one here just like it. And then you have, looks like these are added for the deluxe edition. I don't recall these being in the original. Stability card chart, so you can see what stability cards are playable. Maybe you're looking at the card for your opponent, so because you want to know like what all stability cards do they have that they might have played or will be playing. So there's one for each particular side. Here's the Naval Arms Race, which has been, I believe this track has been slightly modified from the original, based on what I've read. So basically, you progress along these sort of like ship class stages, and when you reach a particular level and your opponent is not there, you get there first, you gain a benefit over here. So it may be victory points, it may be certain capabilities that can be very helpful if you're ahead from your opponent. And now we get to the counters, which is, I'm actually very interested to see this. I want to say the original did not have these like this. I'm just grabbing my old copy. I want to see. Okay, yeah. So the original game, the counters were your standard white core counters that you had to push out. You probably would want to clip the nubs if there was some tufts of counter sheets still stuck to them. Well, it looks like in this deluxe edition, we are getting the very beautiful punch, 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 punch as you go for, it looks like every counter in the game is like this. So that's actually a huge improvement in the quality. It's going to look nicer at the table if you didn't want to sit there and round all the corners of all these strength point markers in the original edition. So without even going too deep into getting into the counters here, I can tell you that that is a significant upgrade from the original. Absolutely is. I'm going to try to get this plastic off so we can look at all the counter sheets together. I might accidentally push a counter out in the process, but let's see here. There we go. Get a little more push. So obviously, these are your influence markers, your support markers. The backside is going to be either the, like, if you're familiar with the Twilight Struggle, this will make sense. You're either showing how much influence you have, or that you have this influence enough to control a space on the board, in which case one of these sides is the one that you would use. So we have two full counter sheets of just the support markers. These are going to be the majority of the play pieces you're going to have on the board. That's now 3 counter sheets dedicated to the support markers, so a lot given over to that. And that then extends onto the final counter sheet, which also has your VP markers, your administrative counters, as well as all the counters for events that should be represented and maybe placed on the map in different places for a mnemonic. So not a terribly complex counter set. Also nice that they're in that easy punch format, so the counters are going to be nice. You're not going to need to round the corners of them. And then the other major upgrade here is the map, which has been upgraded to be a fully mounted map. And as I'm just getting this open, I guess I should just break out the whole thing. Let's just get a get a look at it. Of course, I have it upside down. Running out of space a little bit. Just a moment. There we go. All right. Think, Steve, do a cut. No. No, I will not. So, if you've not seen this game before, each space represents either a physical location or a concept that is important to that particular region for the things that matter here. So, in the Balkans, there's Bosnia, Montenegro, Serbia, very very location based. But if you look over here, stretching now into the Russia zone, there's the Orthodox Church. So it's not so much a physical location, but an important facet of that society in that region. And so you compete to put influence into these spaces to take control. And then when the scoring cards come up, that will have impacts here. So in terms of what the map contains, not a whole lot has changed. Like there have been some spaces have been modified from the original edition to enhance play. The general idea of how the map works is still the same. There's a nice spot for the cards, victory points, the various tracks, and all of that. So looking good, all looking relatively familiar. Each space has an additional like socio-political alignment. So some of them are workers, farmers, if I remember right, religion, bourgeoisie, writers. There's a variety on here, and certain cards will rely on those symbols to either be more effective or less effective or have various game mechanics. So very much similar, in again, vein to Twilight Struggle, 1989, potentially other games kind of in that same vein. I'm trying to look to see here. Yeah. Anyway, so I was trying to look for my copy of 1989 somewhere on the shelf. So yeah, so that's it for European Turmoil Deluxe Edition. I mean, based on what I can see here, this looks like a pretty major upgrade. So if you already like the game and you already owned it, I guess it would be, a call to determine, do you want to upgrade for the nicer components? There have been some minor updates that improve the game, potentially, at least in that opportunity to do a new printing. It was decided to enhance the game as a new edition with some changes. I would imagine that those changes will be generally beneficial to the gameplay. I already enjoyed the original edition quite a lot, so I'm definitely interested to see how this continues to play. And as I just start to get everything back into the box, I would suspect here that once you have started to punch those counters, get them into bags, they're going to lay flat enough in here that everything will fit back in the box relatively well, and you're gonna be in good shape. So we'll set this aside, and now we'll hit the European Turmoil II, the brand new game from Compass Games. And let's see what we have. Again, that additional Grand Campaign player sheet is outside of the box. I'll probably be storing it inside of this box once we get this open. The box is a nice quality. I got a little bit of a dent or a scuff here, but not so much that like I'm worried about it. So that's just something I noticed just right this second, but not a big deal to me. The nice thing is the boxes are pretty sturdy here. So you can, I got a little bit of a rough box here. Not sure what the deal is with that. I don't expect that it's actually a problem for the integrity of the box, but just looks like it maybe got knocked around in transit, perhaps, and got hit or something, but it seems to be okay. The box itself is sturdy. I mean, it's thick, it's solid. I'm not seeing any major issues there. You can start to see that in terms of like the map's going to look somewhat similar to Europe and Turmoil 1. The cards, a little bit different. The iconography and the colors are different, and we'll explain why here in just a minute. So I'll get the lid off. So we get some bags, always good. We're going to have those influence markers that we're going to need. We also have a little bag of dice, black and white, but red and blue cubes. So a difference that there are a dedicated set of components that make Europe and Turmoil 2 a little bit different. And then we see the cards here. Now, these are the strategy cards. And if I just try to break my way into one of these for a second, I want to talk about what's a little bit different with this one. So in Europe and Turmoil 1, you were playing as either the more sort of like liberal democratic ideology, vice, the authoritarian ideology. Here, and this is going to be interesting, and I wonder how people are going to interpret this. It's red and blue, with the blue being right wing, the red being left wing, and just so you can see, the right wing can potentially lean into what would be, I guess, considered the fascism, and the left wing can eventually lean into something like hardcore Soviet Union communist. However, both players are merely left wing and right wing, and you're actually incentivized to not actually go into that extremism. Both players are actually competing to be moderate. And so you can see that this, like previous games or games in the same vein, there's a Great Depression era, there's an appeasement era, different eras for the game itself. The Roaring Twenties is another one. But here you have very distinct, separate kinds of interpretations of what the players are representing. And so here's an example of a card, Book Burnings. This is a right wing card, but to play it is going to mean that you reduce right wing moderation by 1. So moderation is a mechanic that both players are kind of going not quite victory points that are tug of warring there, and it depends on your victory status. So if you're winning the game, but and that's measured in power as victory points. If your power is greater than your moderation, then you begin to radicalize essentially, or accept the extremism from your political wing, and that's going to be bad because by the end of the game, if you have the worst moderation, that could hurt you. So the idea being that right wing ideology without moderation, taken to extremes, becomes a very authoritarian, nationalist sort of entity. And likewise, for the left wing, you become a radicalized, extremist, authoritarian entity, right? And so you're going to be playing scoring cards of the different regions, and you're going to be still doing the same sort of ideological struggle, placing support points and various things here on the map, but at the same time struggling through that sort of extra axis of engagement. And these squares actually represent like extremist radicals that can be placed on the map for good or for ill as it happens. There's one errata sheet here that says the action track on the map should have only 8 boxes, not 9 boxes. So okay, good to know. We have the rule book. This is a glossy paper, 2-column format. Now, this is going to be very much in the same vein as the rule book we just looked at for the original. Looks like all the rules basically break down in about 14 pages, same as the first game. There's going to be, if you're going to play both games, you're going to need to really drill in a little bit and read about the moderation that I just mentioned and how all of that works. It also uses a different track. So rather than a space race track or a naval arms track, it uses rearmament, which is a bit more varied. And then, as opposed to Europe in Turmoil I, which capstoned with World War One, and you kind of played through the mobilization deck, here World War II breaks out, but you really don't engage very much with the Second World War, other than looking at moderation to determine what the alignment of the world is in reaction to you. And there are some mentions in here. I looked at the PDF of the rules, an explanation of kind of like how to interpret that. So, even if you have, say, a high power score, and maybe you were leading up to the very final scoring, the final scoring may indicate that you are so not moderate, you're extremist, that the rest of the world will eventually align against you. And you could look at that as, say, a right-wing player going to the extremism of the fascism and having the rest of the world be willing to support communist Russia against the fascists while that war goes on. That's maybe but one interpretation. I'm not exactly sure what all the designer has said on that. I recommend reading the designer notes and other things. You can see there are the same period pictures and historical details in this rule book, so you can attach each card to a little bit of a paragraph blurb on what's being represented there. You can check that out. Notes on rearmament and how that occurred and leading up to World War II, and you have the example of play, which again always useful to get an understanding of what the game is really like if you've not played any of these. What's also nice is in the back there's this gazetteer on all the spaces on the map. What's their status as of 2021? Granted, it's 2024 now, but as this was being collected and processed for 2021. So should be an easy read to get through. If you played any games of this type, it's going to be straightforward. Here's that rearmament chart. Now, there's a lot of different ways to look at this. So they're categorized. There's really 7 different tracks. One for Germany, France, UK, USSR, Italy, Spain, and the Little Entente. If you max out on one of these tracks, then tension increases, and they can have a variety of different effects. Some are good for right wing, it looks like. Some may be good for left wing, it looks like. And there's probably a lot to unpack in terms of strategy there that would need to be looked at. There's an event chart to stay organized on what events have been played and what does that mean for other events that may or may not be able to be played at that point. So this might be good to set up and then make note of, with the counters, what's been played or not. The player aid here, there's at least one, and maybe this is the only one. I have to see if there's, maybe only one player aid. I might have to look at that. Maybe I accidentally picked one up. This one has more detail, or a fair amount of detail, but it looks like maybe there's only one. On the back, there's information on game setup. Maybe the thinking is the game's straightforward enough. You don't need too much in the way of a player aid, but it's still a nice player aid. Color-coded, 2-column format, all very clear. Now we have the counters, and again, this is going to be very much in the same style as what we just looked at for Europe in Turmoil I. It is the nice, easy breezy punch-out counters, nice quality. You're not going to have to round corners here. I'm not going to break all of these counters out. You can see the example of what the support markers look like and are differentiated by, as well as the administrative counters and event counters, all in, again, that same style. You see a bunch of these are just going to be support markers, so there's not as much exciting to look at there, really, but again, you're going to get these nice, easy to punch out counters. I do like these for the games that it makes sense to publish them for. And then finally, the map, and be able to show this. It is a bit different than the Europe in Turmoil map. You'll notice that the map itself does not have the socio-political icons here. It's mounted map. There's going to be some pooching here until you flatten it out. But the regions here, it's a different set of regions certainly, and even here, um, there's connections. It looks like there's different types of connections. You can see there's a blue connection here, a black connection here. Some that look gray up in the north. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's just maybe. I'll have to look at that. Wondering what's the meaning of those, if there's a meaning, or if it's just to help in clarity of seeing the lines based on where they're at, because a yellow line might be hard to read here. Don't know. I'll have to look into that. You can see the scoring regions. There it looks like Britain has a scoring region. France, you have Spain, Italy, Germany, the Balkans retain, but now Russia is not a scoring zone, so that's changed from the first game. So you just, accommodating the different geopolitical status of the interbellum period, and obviously you can imagine how things in Spain are going to be important if you understand the history there. Interesting that, yes, Gibraltar is a red British space here that has connectivity to parts of Spain, which is all interesting. Um, and likewise, not all of these spaces are necessarily, um, they may not all necessarily be exact locations. I'm trying to see if there's any that are clearly not geographic. There are a few. So you have over here, there's the House of Windsor, there's an Empire and Commonwealth space, there's a Parliament space. So while there doesn't look like there's as many like non-geographic spaces here, they do exist. They are present. There's one for Victor Emmanuel III, who's a person. So there's a little bit of variability here. Certainly, certainly different, a different strategic situation to unpack. You also have a few spaces down here in the corner that pertain to Egypt, British mandate for Palestine, French mandate for Syria and Lebanon. So you can start to see things cooking up towards World War II there on the map. So yeah, I'm interested to play this because I guess that it introduces something different to this paradigm from even Twilight Struggle 1989, the first European turmoil, that both players are trying to be moderate, or maybe not. I think maybe there's based on my reading, there's maybe a game strategy to pursue where you don't worry about moderation, but it means you're going to play differently to push a different outcome. So I guess that's the thing. Both players may be competing to be more moderate to try to navigate these ideological, evolutions and revolutions during this period, and kind of decide, what kind of left wing, what kind of right wing perspective are you going to play here in Control for Europe. So, yeah. So there you go, folks. I'm going to cut the video here and get us to an endpoint. Thanks for watching. Hope these unboxing videos are useful for you so you see what the game looks like. Certainly looking forward to playing these here at home. I believe I'll be playing these with my wife again at some point very soon. So thanks for watching. Take care. Keep on gaming.